Welcome to The Accurate Perspective, a podcast on local politics in Yakima. We take politics to a whole new level. Factual reporting, sources you can trust, and best of all, no BS. Unlike other news organizations, we won't mislead you or manipulate the news to our advantage. It's facts first, and the truth shall set you free. Join our hosts, Matt Brown and Dave Mullen, as we do what we do best, and that's dunk on all our competitors.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Accurate Perspective. This is episode 24, and we have the full gang back together again, and it hasn't been a month, guys. It's only been like a week and a half, and we're back again. It's a miracle. Episode 23 was the curse of episode 23 to try to get us through, but we're back. And we've got a jam-packed episode. Hannah and Dave, how are you guys doing?
Terrible. I'm doing terrible. I can't stand our legislature, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
We're making it, all right? We're making it. So let's jump into the legislature. So we've got some hot topics today, and we're going to try to bring you guys through them slowly and so that you can understand it all. But also, if there's something that you need more information on, feel free to reach out to us. But first on the docket, Senate Bill 5770. So this is an interesting one, especially since I sit on city council in Yakima. So years ago, Tim Eyman put in an initiative to actually cap property tax at 1% every year, right? So if city municipalities across the state wanted to raise that over 1%, they had to go to the voters every time. But they could do it automatically through a council vote at 1% every year. And so it's been capped at that for years. Well, Senate Bill 5770 raises it to 3% automatic versus 1%. What's interesting, though, is that that's higher than what is even allowed for council to take to the voters to approve. So it becomes really interesting, because if a council can just add 3% on top of 3% on top of 3% on top of 3%, in 6 years you're looking at 18% higher on your property tax. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but I can't afford it. I mean, I was trying to do some calculations. I don't quite understand all the calculations of property tax and how they figure out their formulas and all that stuff. But my rough estimates, at 18%, I was going to be close to like an extra $600 on top of my property tax right now. Mm-hmm. Right. And we start talking elderly, middle class, lower income. We can't afford that.
Now add school levies and every other thing on top of that.
Yeah. And their reasoning, I guess, I mean, this has been kind of a bill passed or pushed by AWC, which is the Association of Washington Cities. I call them the evil empire. No, I'm just kidding. There's probably some good people in there. But AWC has been pushing this because a lot of municipalities are struggling financially, right?
Well, why? Well, why are they struggling financially when they're getting all of this tax money and all this extra credit during COVID and everything else?
It's, I want to say it's years of bad management. That's what I want to say, right? So some of these cities are going through this, and it's like stuff of maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago is now finally, because of COVID, because of inflation, it's now like the cliff has arrived. We see the impending cliff. In Yakima, for example, we've been starting to go through budget season, and they're showing us right now we're solvent up till 24. So I'm like, all right, we got this year, we got next year. We're getting good.
16 months.
In 25 and 26, it starts to look real hairy. So 25, it's between. I mean, I've seen different projections, and it changes based on the day you ask them. But it goes from anywhere from 3 to 5 million in the hole to then by 26, 18 to 20 or 15 to 20 million in the hole. and just keeps escalating. So when that starts to happen, right? So cities only have so many tools in their quiver per se to actually fix these problems. They increase property tax. In Yakima, where I think I said at a council meeting, because I looked it up at the time, was 22% of our population lives below the poverty line. So increasing property tax ain't going to work very well.
What is the definition of poverty? I mean, what is that threshold that would put them in that category?
It was sub 30,000 in income, and so it's very low in Yakima. It's actually 47% higher than the rest of the country, which is interesting as well.
That is.
Yeah. And so as we started to look at those things, I was like, well, property tax isn't going to work if we increase it. Here's the other problem, is it just kicked the can down the field a little bit longer. So instead of 25, 26, it became 27, 28. It moved it a little bit, or actually it was 28 or 29, 30 is when that same impending cliff, it just kicked it out. So anyways, that's just in Yakima, and I'm sure in other cities. I mean, Yakima's got an overall budget in the $250 million, 260 million. I can only imagine what Seattle's budget is. It's got to be in the billions. Because anyways, so doing an automatic 3%, would it solve our funding problems in the city? It would definitely help, right?
Right.
Would it probably run people out of our town eventually? Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So what would be the alternative to that? Like, the first thing that I would think is, if I was in your position, which I'm not, thankfully, my question would be, how can I bring income in without raising taxes, or so on and so forth? And would one of those answers be industry, bringing in a big manufacturing or industry plant that would potentially help make up for that?
Yeah, one of the things that we've looked at a multitude of things. The reasoning why we've been pushing really hard to try to get an airport, expanded there's a lot of jobs, a lot of expansion, a lot of industry that can be brought in to help support our citizens here. So that's huge. Also with sales tax and all that fun stuff that comes around with that. The other options that honestly we're looking at is annexation. Down south, down in Arizona, Texas. I don't know if you guys visit those places ever, but if you go down there, everything's super wide. You know that? You go to Phoenix and you can drive for 45 minutes and still be in Maricopa County. You can just keep on driving. Well, what they did is they just kept annexing. What Washington decided to do years ago was put in the Growth Management Act. And so there's only so much that we can actually annex into. They did it to try to, keep cities from becoming too large, or counties becoming too large. The problem is, though, that's how down in the South, how big cities solved their funding problems. They just kept annexing.
So You're saying the growth management put a cap but didn't give you solutions to mitigate that?
Correct. Yeah. So it's, like right now, if you look at our boundary lines for the GMA and Yakima City, there's not a whole lot of extra room for us to actually annex to. There's probably 5 options left on the table in annexation. Past that, it's going to have to go to the County Boundary Lines Commission, and then they have to work with extending the boundary lines or doing some other work. And they could also say, no, Yakima, sorry, you don't get to expand. So one of the things we are looking at, though, at the city is we put in a study, and it's going to be to us at the end of this year, where it's an annexation study. We're looking at all 5 of those options, because if you annex, you might be able to bring in more income. Hopefully not a whole bunch of expenses, but that's what we're looking at. But that's another tool, right, that cities have So you either raise revenue with sales tax or property tax, or you annex,
Right.
or you cut, right? So since our city manager came in, he's already cut 10% the first 2 years that he's been there. The problem is right now we're now looking at service line cuts. So it's not just cutting percentage wise anymore. Now it's like whole stations or different, like personnel or different things like that, which I'm like, that's the reality of that we're all feeling.
What is
right?
what is our top three most, or wow, what are the top three expenses?
Well, in our general fund, it 90% of our funding goes to about 90, roughly, goes to fire and police.
Wow, 90% goes to fire and police.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, it's a big slew of the puzzle, and so when people say like, well, you're not funding fire and police, or I'm like, dude, it's 90% of our general budget.
Dang. So where I used to live in Georgia, our fire had a certain area, right? Each station had a certain area, and you had to pay. And if you didn't pay the monthly fee for that fire service, they would come watch your house burn and make sure the neighbors didn't, because they're paying. But they were I'm honest, they were completely funded by the people within their district. And you had every right to say, I can't pay or whatever. Or the church sometimes would pay for 3 or 4 houses. There was measurements in place. But is that against the law here in Washington to do for your district people to pay instead of it coming out through the city?
So there's options, right? That's another tool that we're looking at is there's a regional fire district. Typically, I'm against regionalizing anything.
Yeah, I'm with you right there, 100%.
This is a little bit different. Regionalizing a fire department would actually combine resources throughout the county and revenue, and they would be elected positions inside the county. And so it would offset. So all the cities that would join in on this would actually take that off of their books, right? The regional fire district would become its own taxing authority inside the county.
Oh, it's a junior taxing district.
Yeah. So, it becomes, which there's pros and disadvantages. The disadvantage is the city no longer has any say over this regional fire district, right?
Mm.
So they're doing their own thing. Some people say it's the you got the firefighters running the fire, the fire, everything. They're the guys that are getting elected, and they're setting their own budgets. They're setting their own pay scales. They're setting all, there's no, which again, I'm like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. They still have to take it to the voters. So even if they did a tax increase or different things like that, they can't without taking it to the voters. A regional fire district also would offload a ton of money off of our general fund budget, right? I mean, that 15 to 20 million range in 26 would probably be cut in half or more by offloading the fire district, which is huge. So yep. I can see why AWC is pushing for this 3% on this SB 5770. But I will say, I think other cities, there's a lot of different options to explore before you get to that. And the 3% every year, council-matic, automatic, I think it's just going to make Washington unlivable, to be honest.
I think it's just not as black and white as they're making it out to be. And you're right. We've got levies and taxes. And we just saw last podcast, we were talking about how Camas, the people actually stood up and said, no, we're not going to increase our taxes even more. That we're paying like 24% in taxes. Like, that's ridiculous. We can't keep living this way. And you just want more and more and more and more. And so either people are going to leave or people are going to start fighting back. Well, I mean, I don't know what else other option there is, right, between those two. But
and you look at like your property tax right now. I mean, at least in Yakima County, I don't know how it is in other counties, but in Yakima County, well, at least mine, when I look at it, almost 60% of my property tax goes to schools and education.
That's
huge, right? And, schools are starting to talk about bonds and levies and doing all of that some more right now. And then cities are talking about raising property taxes, and then counties are talking about blah, 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 blah. And then the state's talking about, and I'm like, dude, there is a breaking point. There's a line there. And in Yakima, where you got 20% of our population living under poverty, I'm going, it's not real hard to find the line in Yakima. It's there.
Mhm.
seriously.
We're going to hit it. So, anyways, that's one of the bills. I'm interested to see where it goes. I don't know if it'll pass. It's got like 9 days left in session to get out. So we'll see what happens. Dave, there's also a bad bill though. Well, in your mind, what was the bill?
All right, SB 5599. I'm not the only one who thinks it's bad. I think most parents do. Most sane parents do. So SB 5599 just passed. It allows us state officials to take custody of your children if their parents refuse to consent to their sex change surgeries. And I think the age is something young, like 12. So, an example, my 12-year-old daughter, whenever she turns 12, can decide she wants to be a boy. And if I say no, that's considered abuse, and she can go to authorities. She can be sheltered at a house. She can get a sex change surgery, and me as her father would have no right to know where she is or what is happening to my 12-year-old daughter. That was a bill that just passed. A lot of people have heard from Brandy Cruz about it. I think one of the interesting things about that bill is that it was debated in the middle of the night. I don't know if that was on purpose or not. I'm assuming it was.
Absolutely.
Democrats, because they don't want people to know. I think when this bill came up for public testimony, something like 90%, greater than 90% of the testimony was in the negative for the bill. So 10% were like, yeah, this is great. I don't know, man. I'll tell you guys what, it makes me rethink staying in Washington State right now because of this, that the state is trying to exert authority, or they are exerting authority over me. And, what God has placed on me to be the parent of these 4 children. And now the state's trying to take my kids away.
Well, because the state doesn't see you as the parent. The state just sees you as somebody who gave birth to the next generation of people they need to control.
Right.
Well, it becomes the state is looking. It's this bill in my mind actually makes it look like the state is becoming where all we are as parents are producers.
Yep.
Right. We are producers of society, and when we're done producing in society, what happens? They excrete the people that are done producing in society. And, we just went through, you just saw this over in New York with Andrew Cuomo, who he got out of as a governor for other reasons, but going off of the COVID piece, there was tens of thousands of elderly that died during the COVID piece by decisions that he made.
Yeah.
And they excreted the non-producers from society. I hate to say it that way, but that is what happens. And this bill, in my mind, I've been trying to be like, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'd like to see them come try to get my children. I'm trying to play devil's advocate. The other piece of that is if a 12-year-old can make that decision, then that 12-year-old can go to war.
100%. The logic of that,
but,
Matt, is just insane to me.
Well, and they can, if they need to be exposed to all of this sexual diversity, then they should also be exposed in early age to drug diversity. Why not give them some cocaine in 2nd grade? Why not give them some methamphetamine in 5th grade? Because they won't know unless they experience it if they really want to be, homeless and living as a drug addict on the streets.
And why, if a child at 12 can make this decision, why are Democrats also banning, assault weapons too? Can a 12-year-old make a decision to have an assault weapon if they can make the decision to change their gender? Why are they not responsible enough to do any of that? The logic behind this bill is so insane to me that it only lends itself to that. Right. And so there's only one mission in mind, and that's to take kids away from conservative parents at the end of the day. I think that's what Marco Elias, the senator who really pushed this, that's what he's about. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't want conservatives with kids. And another interesting fact is he was one of the main sponsors. He doesn't even have kids. So like, like give me a break. So you're taking kids, you don't have kids, like you don't, I hate getting into that logic too, because you don't know what it's like, so you shouldn't speak about it. But when it comes to parenting, it kind of, that does attach itself to that. So I wanted to make sure that was.
That's wild. I didn't realize he didn't have kids.
No.
That's important. It is important because you don't understand the maternal instinct, or the parental instincts that people have when you start making bills like this. It's just, I don't have a qualm in this game because my kids will never step foot in a school ever. They will never have access to somebody who would be willing to take them away from me, because that stranger danger. And honestly, I've taught my children that if anybody comes to you and starts talking about anything like that, you just no thank you and walk away very quickly.
Run away.
I think
we try to be respectful.
I think it should be pointed out that like this bill doesn't just cover Washington residents, from my understanding. Like kids from other states apparently can just come here and they'll do the surgery. They can go in the shelter.
And we'll do the surgery for free, right? On taxpayer dime, just like abortions from other states.
100%.
For free. Come here. We'll do it all for free.
Yep. But we won't take care of these kids when they have mental health issues 7 years from now and they're regretting everything they did at the age of 12. We won't take care of them then.
Yep. And we're not going to help them with their drug addiction when they can't deal with their mental health problems. Instead, we're going to give them the drugs.
Yeah. Clean needles for everybody.
I just have it's like in the last, 2 years, I just feel like all of these things at least in our state, I just feel like we're being waterboarded.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, I just want to be left alone. I just want to be able to live my life, make my money, provide for my kids and my wife, be able to live a happy life. I want you to be able to live a happy life. I want you to be able to be safe and secure. And I want you to be able to be left alone, right? Like there needs to be, in my opinion, a day of reckoning that, and I'm not saying anything about before anyone gets all crazy on this stuff.
That's it, Matt. I know where you fit now.
There's no violence, but the day of reckoning of thinking of like, how are we as society going to continue to be okay with one another waterboarding each other in our beliefs? Like, because I'm just like, dudes.
I had the answer. I wish I had the answer. But people genuinely hate us. And I say that because it's true. I'll have people who talk about me as the most vicious, horrible person on the face of the earth. And then I'll meet them and they won't know who I am. We'll have a lovely conversation. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh gosh, you're her, you're Hannah Joy. Like they're appalled all of a sudden. But why? We were having a great conversation. We met and agreed on many things, but the division is so stark here in Washington, and the division is fueled by our own government.
Yeah, it's like the policies are just aimed at forcing everything down anyone's throat. Like I'm just like, dudes, like do whatever you want to do. Just leave me out of it. Yeah, there's actually a funny thing a friend of mine said. He actually came up with a great idea. He said, I've got it. I've got this resolution to Washington where we don't have to split the state. We don't have to do any of that. I've got the solution. I said, okay, what is it? He goes, if Democrats pass a policy, Democrats have to live by it. Republicans don't have to. And he's like, and if Republicans pass a policy that Democrats don't like, they don't have to live by it either. Okay. So it was like, we could just live by the policies that our parties set. And I was like, it would work for maybe, I don't know, a year or so. And then I feel like, hey, right. It would be very interesting. Oh, I'm not gonna. I can't.
Even
do
though that would be an interesting experiment, being that, Democrats pass like a mandatory 20% tip on everything you eat or food, and then you see a Republican over there only tipping 10% because it's all they can give. You're like, wait a minute.
Well, and I can't believe that there's not more Democrat parents who are sitting back watching this stuff continuously coming at their kids and not be like, yeah, just let it happen. It's no problem. And I can't believe that. I have Democrat friends that have kids, many kids, and we share an agreement on things that it gets really frustrating in Washington State. The fact that, Dave, you mentioned 90% were against that bill. I'm like, legislature, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to represent the people. You're supposed to represent people.
Yep.
And that's not what you're doing. So anyways, it's a pretty crazy bill. And it's passed, right? It's going to get signed.
It'll be signed. Now. I'm sure they'll make a big production about it and how they care about kids. And, the last thing to be said on this topic is this is on purpose. This is clear. The Democrats aren't doing this by accident. They know what they're doing in Olympia.
Yeah. Again, are we just producers? Is that all we are?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to devil's advocate this one.
Uh-oh.
I feel that what has happened is we've had people and parents over many, many decades told they don't know what's best for their children, and that society has to change and evolve. And when they've gotten so dead set in this mindset that they do not understand or know what's best for society or their own children to be able to thrive in that society, they'll accept it. It's all propaganda. It really is. But the reality is we've had decades of propaganda in the school systems training these parents to the point where they're now thinking that, the school still knows what's best. The school still has the best intentions for the child. Yes, things are going bad, but they really have good intentions. And I am completely incapable of teaching and training my child to live in the current society we're in. And that's where the breakdown's coming from, is you've got to instill confidence in these parents to say, no, your beliefs, your thought processes aren't wrong. And yes, you are very, very capable of raising your children. You don't need the school for that.
And yes, as a parent, it's your responsibility to teach your kid morals and not offload it to the public school government indoctrination centers of public schools. Like, it's our job as parents to teach our kids what your true moral north is, not these school districts.
But if you look at history in our country, let's look at it, right? The fatherless generation, which is, happened. And then you had
generation was that?
Then you had the kids after that, now the family started to erode back in the 1960s and 1970s. It started to slowly drip into family implosions, divorce skyrocketed. Where now all of a sudden they're like, what is the family unit? Unit, sorry, not union.
I was like, there's a family union
now? Unit. What is that, right? And then if you have generation after generation after generation that has not experienced a normal home life, I'm a product of a broken home, right? Like my parents were divorced when I was 7 years old. Like that's, and then I had to all of a sudden be the dude with 3 sisters, right? And so, I'm like, I get it, but I also didn't, when I was little, I was like, I'm not going to allow this to define me. Right. Like,
who did you have though in your life that was that example? Grandparents, neighbors, you had to have somebody in your life to give you the example of a healthy marriage.
It was my grandfather. Yeah. It was my grandfather and my grandmother. They were the rock blood of my life, of growing up until they passed away. And I get that, but I'm like, that's why I think it's so valuable. I've been helping out when I can with my kids' Little League baseball team. And a lot of these kids, like just sitting out and watching them play, and they're not the greatest baseball players. They don't know what they're doing half the time. It's pretty comical. Sometimes their parents are there. Sometimes their parents aren't there. But the kids are hilarious to watch out there, but they light up when someone actually cares about what they just did, right? Or remembers their name. So, and I say that because there's this little kid, I'm not going to name him, but there's this little kid who literally saw me on the news and came running across the baseball field. And he was like, Matt. And I was like, what's up? And he was like, I saw you on the news last night. You're famous. And I was, and he was like, and I know you. And I was like, right. And so anyways, I just think, if we really want to try to solve society's problems, we have to really start analyzing this family unit. Gosh, that is a hard word for me to say today. Looking at it, because that's the only way we're going to solve this long term, is really making family a priority, parenthood a priority, and making sure that if kids don't have parents, that someone is giving a good influence to those kids. So let's move on a little bit, since we're talking about the younger generation, Gen Z, my favorite generation to talk about.
First, I want to find out what we are. What are you, Dave?
I don't know. I was born in 1989, so I'd have to look that up.
Oh, you're a millennial.
You're a millennial, and you're too far into the millennial to not be considered
Generation Y are the millennials. But here's the thing: is that my family. How do I explain this? My family unit is older. Like my brothers are 6 years older, 8 years older, and 10 years older. So I got like the older generation upbringing and values than a lot of millennials friends did, I think. And I'm super lucky to have had that.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to tell Matt too, is that although I fit within the time frame of millennial, my family did not embrace, cell phones and internet and all of that while I was growing up. Thankfully, I'm very grateful for that. And so I actually fit into the mold of a Gen X more than I do a millennial because of that. And Matt,
somehow I'm older than Dave. I don't know how that's possible. Born in 88, you're born in 89. I thought you were older than me, man. That's a
whatever. I'm older than both of you.
This is what 4 kids does to you.
So we're all millennials here. So let's talk about this Gen Z group, because they're a huge voter base. So my kids are Gen Alpha. Hannah, you got some Gen Alphas. Dave's got some Gen Alphas. Here's the crazy thing with Gen Z, right? So in 2022, they dominated. They were like the newest voter base to come out and just like vote heavily. There's now some data out to show, like, what do we know? Well, we know this: 77% voted Democrat in 2022.
No surprise.
Right? 21% voted Republican, which still doesn't equal 100%. So anyways, but I don't know where the other percentage went or where they voted.
Must have done that chart.
They're also self-proclaimed the best educated generation.
Self-proclaimed.
Self-proclaimed. So, but here's the problem. I know a bunch of Gen Zers, and they're Republican, and they're getting stuff done. But here's the problem: if Republicans can't figure out how to reach Gen Zers, we have some serious problems in the future as a party. Like serious problems. And I'm going to say this because just looking at the recent data. So I pulled other data up in 2020. So Lauren Culp versus Jay Inslee, governor, right? It was like a 550,000 vote difference between the two of them. About half of that vote were Gen Z.
Dang.
Right? Is how many voted in the state of Washington. In 2022, with Tiffany Smiley and Patty Murray, whatever the difference was, about the same with Colt, was exactly half of the difference between Tiffany Smiley and Patty Murray were Gen Z voters. So when you think about it, I'm like, if Republicans want to win this state ever again in the history of Washington State, if they ever want to attempt it, they're going to have to figure out Gen Z. They're going to have to pray really hard that Gen Z figures out Republicans later.
Because what you're saying, let's just facts. Gen Z, right before they became a voting age, we're so heavily indoctrinated by the school system towards democracy or Democrats that in order to get to them, you're going to have to move really far to the left. And then you're saying, well, now you're diluting our principles in order to pull in this base, right? Because I honestly don't think that there's any time soon that these Gen Zers are going to actually understand what we're talking about until taxes hit them. And we see kids staying with their parents into 20, 24, 25. They're not going to experience real life and the struggles of their vote until much, much later. So I have a very hard time feeling that we're ever going to get to them anytime soon.
Okay, so but let's look at the issues that they care about. All right, so
Okay.
I'm gonna put this graph up. Hopefully, you guys can see it. It's a little small, so just squint with us. So pretty much number one is protecting access to clean water and fresh air. Okay,
That's the Green Constitutional Amendment.
yeah, reducing gun violence and mass shootings. Okay, all right. Guaranteeing a quality education for every child. I
Define
personally,
equality.
yeah, I personally, I sit there and I look at that and I go, well, I mean, as long as the quality is to the parent's standard, that it's not a bad deal. Dealing with the mental health crisis. Amen.
I'm with that one, 100%.
Amen.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I am too, but
Access-
we need to have good definitions of what success means for mental health crisis. Because right now, success means throwing millions of dollars at it and letting it go.
Right.
Yeah.
Accessing affordable housing.
And I'm going to just go ahead and say this now, but this poll, we have no idea what the questions and how the questions were worded in order for this poll, right? And so many times when I see a poll, they are worded so precisely that if you don't answer, yes, this is the most important thing to me, it makes you feel like the worst person on earth.
True.
Throwing that out there.
So what I think is interesting, though, accessing affordable housing. So we just talked about property tax, 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%. It's the definition of removing affordable housing is to increase property tax. So and these are messaging wins that I think Republicans can hit on. We want affordable housing. This is how you do this.
It's not about accessing, it's about creating. And you create it by lowering taxes, and you also create it by lowering those the bureaucratic policies that prevent builders from building affordable housing. They can't. They literally cannot afford to build affordable housing when you have policy that is spending $15,000 to $20,000 just to get the permitting to build the house.
Right. Addressing systemic racism. Well, I reject all racial supremacy. So there's a win. We can do that.
Amen on that.
Preserving individual rights and freedoms. Amen.
Second
Amen.
Amendment. I'm with it.
Let's go. Ensuring that healthcare is a right.
No.
So I might differ with that.
I think it's a privilege, honestly.
100%. Yep.
Now, do I agree that healthcare should cost $5 bajillion if you need to get, because you need antibiotics because you got a sore throat? No, I think that's asinine. I do think that healthcare is out of control, and
it's not healthcare. It's the insurance companies. People have to realize that the healthcare isn't the issue. It's the insurance companies that are the issue.
Fighting crime.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's like the top 10 right there, right? Protecting religious freedom. Amen. So I'm like, all right, hey,
the next one I'm all for too. 100%.
Creating an informed society. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm like the top 10. What I found interesting though, okay, so the last, I can keep going on, creating jobs, blah, 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 but upholding women's reproductive rights. So everything I've heard on everything and all the news and all the places, all the pieces of everything, all the pundits have all been saying Gen Z is mad about the abortion stuff, blah, 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 blah. Not according to this. It's like not even in their top 5, right? It's middle of the road down here. So interesting. All right. So that's That's some more data. Republicans and my goal is to start this conversation about Gen Z, because Republicans have to figure out how to reach Gen Z. The end goal is I'm hoping to actually have some Gen Z on this show, right? And start talking to them about how can we bridge some of these gaps. Who knows? We're going to have to figure it out. Okay. So
I feel humbled.
You feel what?
I feel humbled. I came into this really skeptical that there would be absolutely no way to access Gen Zers, and I felt like that was just too big. But once you put it in that way, you're right. We actually do have a lot more in common with them. It's just how we talk about the issues. We tend to attack instead of agree. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I read an article the other day. Gen Z is very swayed by public opinion and news media, right?
Oh.
And so up before 2020, Gen Z were not afraid of Republicans. After 2020, they're deathly afraid.
Good.
Oh.
So
what did you do in 2 years? What happened?
Well, what have you seen on news media, right? I mean,
that's right.
You had Biden like looking like he's in the red, yeah.
And you had Inslee accusing us of wanting to kill people by not wearing a mask.
And the
right?
AT trying to create a commission to make us domestic terrorists in the state for sticking up for our kids.
Oh,
that's right. So I think this is a winnable battle.
Yep.
I think you're right. I think we just have to work on our messaging.
Yeah.
I think one of the main topics Hannah talked about was housing. I think if you attack that with Gen Z, they're trying to find housing, and all I hear is like, kids aren't going to be able to afford a house. And like, okay, everything Hannah said, plus let's open up some federal land and give it to some local people. Let's open up some more land. Let's go.
Yeah.
And that would create jobs. But like you guys said, the messaging has to change.
If you look, there are tons of philanthropic people and organizations and PACs that if you gave them land, they would go on their own dime and build tiny homes or neighborhoods. They would do it all themselves. Yep. You just have to let the people do and stop oppressing them from doing the right things. And that's exactly what's happening.
Yep. So this leads me. So a friend of mine sent us, who's with TPUSA. She was down at UW. It's made national news, blah, 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 blah. It's been going everywhere. She's at UW and she's just trying to reach the Gen Z population. And this is the thing she gets. And we're going to play this video. And when we talked about waterboarding earlier, and anger and like, this clip pretty much sums that up for me. Like, I'm just like, everyone needs to calm down. So here we go. If I can figure out how to play it. All right, guys.
Technically, no. Yeah, no, you just support the genocide of trans kids and you want everyone who's born to die. Yeah, no, you do. That is such an assumption. It's such an assumption, right, with all of this shit. Right. What is anti-trans on the table?
So he's just sitting there talking. Like what
the? Props to the guy behind the camera. You know how calm he is?
Actually.
I mean, that guy could be the poster board for what is that type of parenting right now that people are doing that's super popular? Like calm parenting. I can't remember it. Something like that.
Helicopter parenting or no?
No. But his voice is just so level and just like, and he asked, right, what is about my table that's offending you, right? There was no answer to be given. Dang it, I don't know what it's called now. Now I feel bad.
I when I first saw the video, I was like, that person who just had the table thrown at them is the most calm, gentle person I've ever. I mean, because I would have lost. I would have thrown the table right back. Like you. I mean, not today's Matt would have done that prior, but I'm like, dude, don't throw a table at me. Like, what is your deal? If you don't like me, just keep walking. You don't have to sit here. Like, just leave me alone.
My first thought when I saw that video was, this is what they must mean when the left talks about being tolerant and inclusive of all ideas. flipping tables of people you disagree with. So really on brand for the left. And like I said, that was my first thought of that video.
You know what my first thought was? And this might get controversial, but my first thought was, I can only imagine that person is going through hormone replacement therapy. And as a woman who has to lovingly experience hormonal shifts a month, it is truly a hard thing to deal with. And if you are pumping in these synthetic hormones into somebody whose body's trying to fight it, I can imagine the turmoil they're dealing with and having to try to maintain sanity within that.
I mean, to me, I'm like, if they were running and chasing this person down and try to bringing them to the table, if that was happening, then that person had every right to flip a table. Like, leave me the frick alone, right? But this guy walked over, sought them out, cussed them out, and threw the table in their face. And I'm just like, we have to figure out as a society to return civility, and be able to have a conversation without losing our temper.
What was it that he said? He said that you were for the genocide of
trans rights,
trans people.
Yeah.
And that for me is where did you even get that thought process? Where did you even get that idea? Like, what about TPUSA is wanting the genocide of trans people? It doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it's just wild. So I'm like, as I'm trying to figure out how to reach Gen Z population, I look at this and I'm like, man, at least I'm not getting tables thrown in my face. But if you're listening on this podcast, you might have already thrown the phone against the wall because Matt's talking about this issue. But I'm just saying, like, as a society, we're going to have to figure out how to be civil again. Like, I don't know how, but we're going to have to figure it out. You know, we used to be able to have conversations when we disagreed, and then still were able to go watch a movie, hang out, do stuff, even if we disagreed. Right. I had friends growing up that I wholly disagreed with how they lived. And there was a point where I was like, I can't hang out with you anymore because it's just against my faith and everything that I am and how I believe. I go, I still love you. Like, you do you, man. Like, just, I can't do that, but the conversation piece never ended. Like, we still talk, how's life, how's this, blah, 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 blah. Right. That's just gone now. Like you can't have a conversation without throwing a table at someone.
I don't know about that. I think that's wrong because I have many conversations with people who don't believe the same as me in a coffee shop. But I'm also that type of person. I'll sit next to you if you're a complete stranger, if you're alone, and be like, hey, can I sit here? Like, let's have a conversation. And I think that what we saw in that video is not, we tend to always blow those up because they're exciting and they're drama, but that's not the norm. I think people are willing to sit down and have a conversation. We just have to stop being scared. And the conservatives are just as guilty as this.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. And so I think that it's up to us to sit down and have that conversation, and not about politics or religion. Just sit down and have a conversation, right? There's so many things that you can agree with. Oh, do you love your grandchildren? I love mine too. Here's mine. Let me see yours. There's conversations that we can have that can build relationships so that when a controversial topic does come up, it's met with more calmness and more thought-provoking, possibilities than just immediate cutoff.
Well, and I'm like, if that's getting you that angry, like just the sheer existence of someone standing in the middle of a public square, like we need to be getting you some help. Like, I'm like, I'm like, you said mental health is a big one on your Gen Z voter card here, right? So I'm like, I agree. If you can't walk across an entire park without wanting to go throw a table at someone, I'm like, there's some serious. I'm like, just breathe.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Just breathe.
Don't let these external forces have so much control over your day-to-day joy or happiness, and that's what some folks are doing. It goes right back to mental health, like you said, man. But Hannah, you even mentioned, do these people have good mentors in their life? Do they, like, I'll just bring this one up. Like the guys who are transitioning to women, do they have strong masculine figures in their life showing them the way to go? You know what I mean? Like I always think there's a more holistic approach. Right. Exactly. Why would they?
So those people don't have strong men in their lives. Those people have strong women in their lives. And because of that, that's why they think they must transition into a woman, because that's all they've been given as an example in their life. They've never been given a healthy example of what a man is. They've grown up probably with women who trash men, divorce, whatever, right? We're independent. We could do it ourselves. We don't need men. Men are toxic. And there you go. Why would a young boy who grows up in that environment ever want to be a man?
Right.
When his entire life he was surrounded by women who not only bashed them, but degraded them and made sure that they understood they didn't need them. Yep. Well, if they don't need a man and I'm going to grow up into a man, they're not going to need me either.
Yep.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah. And what you're saying is that individual is looking up to that person. That's the opinion. That's the voice in their head is the mom. So they don't want to disappoint mom. So they don't want to be that crappy guy who, runs around or whatever they put into their head. I get that as a great explanation.
Right. And then you get them into a school where they're already struggling with this thought process that's somewhat twisted. And then the school just amplifies it 10,000 times. Oh, you don't want to be a man. Not I don't want to be an unhealthy man. Because a child doesn't know how to say that yet. Mm-hmm. A child is just simply saying, I don't want to be a man because that's what hurt my mom. And then the school takes that and goes, great, let's take you and transition you.
Yeah. And in the schools, we don't have a lot of male teachers either. I think that number has dropped dramatically in the last 3 decades or so, where maybe 10% of teachers are male now. And that hasn't.
And actually, I don't have a problem with that. I actually don't have a problem with that. If you had healthy female teachers, making sure that there is some male influence, the gym teacher or whatever. Yep. In our school, our middle school, we had an incident where we've had several gun scares. A kid keeps writing on the wall that they're going to shoot the school up today, right? They've definitely manipulated the system. They know it gets them out of school. It's absolute silliness. And during the teacher meeting, they were like, we're monitoring the bathrooms as best we can. I've got female teachers going in the female bathrooms and I'm going into the male bathrooms and making sure we're monitoring. This is a homosexual man. Why are you going in the boys' restroom to monitor? That is an issue. When you have your husband there at school with you as a man and you're monitoring little boys' room. So we don't even know what the heck we're doing in the school system. It's a free-for-all. It's crazy.
It really is.
Well, and that's, I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here, right? So America was founded on very simple principles, in my mind. And, there was always the thought of the American dream. You can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. You can make whatever you want to make in your life, you can make it. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not saying that. What is interesting though is like, does that apply to all things? Right? You can be. I'm like, I want to be a microphone now. So I'm going to be, I can't be a microphone. Right? There's laws that govern society that are not laws, that are natural law. That I can't be a microphone. I'm flesh and blood.
I have no problems with that superintendent being homosexual. Whatever right. You do in your home and on your private life with your husband is your business. What I have a problem with is that if you identify as being sexually attracted to a certain type of body type, you shouldn't be in that area with children.
100%. No,
but you want to pretend to be a microphone? Whatever. Do it in your home on your own time. Have somebody speak into you like a microphone, whatever. But once you're in society, that's a different thing, right? And then if you're...
But we used to understand that.
Well, yes. We don't anymore.
I guess that's where, I listened in a Zoom call with a university and I just jumped in incognito and they were talking
or
incognito. Sorry, words are hard. and I'm listening in, and they're talking about how, like, literally you can be anything. You can be anything. You can be the tree. You could be the grass. You could be this pen. And I'm sitting there like, no, you can't. No, you cannot. You
That's the
cannot be
problem.
a pen.
That's the problem.
You know, and I'm like, but then someone told me, it's like, well, it's the American dream, Matt. You can be whatever you want. And I said,
There's a limit.
No, the American dream is you can act however you want, but you will be responsible for the consequences that are put on you by the rest of society for doing so. That is the American dream.
if you want to dress like a pen, go for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're laughed at, well, that's the consequences of you wanting to pretend to be a pen.
Yeah.
You can't force anybody to call you a pen. You know?
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to call you a pen.
You know, if you called me a pen, I might have to throw a table. So I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for that one. So anyways, I just, Gen Z, if this has already alienated you with this podcast, I'm sorry, but I'm really just trying to understand and trying to find common ground. That is what I'm trying to do, because I don't want to move out of this state. I like living in Washington. I like living in Yakima, regardless of its issues. And, you know, I want to raise my family here. And so I'm like, we have to figure out a way to have a conversation and be okay with each other, living how we want to live.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I identify as being understanding, so you're good.
All right, Dave. Let's go rapid. Well, okay. Staying on that same.
We should talk about parking.
Yeah. So there's downtown parking, Dave. What's going on with downtown parking?
He loves it. I love downtown parking and fighting against it, apparently. But, like, I don't know why it has come up recently. I don't know if the city council has taken action or whatever, Matt, but I feel like in public conversation, it's a topic again. And so with that in mind, we wanted to take a look into it as accurate perspective. And we are preparing an opinion piece right now through the lens of equity with downtown parking. And does it make sense? And is paid parking in downtown Yakima equitable? Is it fair, in other words? So we've reached out to some council members for comment. Listen, it was just yesterday or the day before, and we're going to give them a chance to comment. But our argument is a few different reasons against downtown parking, but the equity piece of it is the median income of those two zip codes in downtown Yakima, I think, is 98901 and 98902. And the median income there is somewhere around 35 to 37,000, right? And so you have people making that much money a year, or that little amount of money a year, and they have to pay for parking. And some of them are working down there, so now they're paying to work on a very minimal salary. Well, we wanted to compare that to another kind of city center, and the closest one is in West Valley. There is no paid parking in West Valley, and the median income in West Valley is close to $60,000. So a little less than double what the downtown area is. So you have West Valley, who is more affluent, no paid parking with a bunch of shopping malls around, and similar to downtown Yakima, where they are proposing paid parking for the people that are less fortunate and are working service industry jobs. It's also worth mentioning that we're losing businesses in downtown. Just this week, two major businesses announced that they were closing their doors. So Norm's, which is a restaurant, has the best mac and cheese in Yakima. And then H&H Furniture, which has been in business for 54 years, is closing down on purpose. So like I said, we reached out to some council members. I am not in agreement with downtown paid parking. I think it hits the people who need help the most. And I just don't see how it's equitable in any way. And I just don't see how it helps anything, to be honest with you. Like, there's
Dave, are they talking about putting in paid parking, or does it already exist?
They're talking about
putting in paid parking.
Yep. And it would.
So what is it going to cost the city? Yeah.
Matt, was it I think I read some meeting minutes, and correct me if I'm wrong. I thought it was anywhere between 2 and 5 million to put it in. I could be wrong. But to put
Yeah,
the
it's about 2.8.
What's the
2.8.
rate of solvency? At what point would it actually pay for itself? And are you considering the fines to be the thing to pay for it?
They're talking about. I think the presentation was like 5 years, 5 to 10 years to pay it off.
Yep.
With an estimated and how much of that coming from fines?
There wasn't fines. It was just the pay part. There's no free, right? So the whole thing is you pay for minute one.
Right.
They were just projecting like how much money are they going to make on the meters, basically.
So they're projecting how much money they can skim off the most suffering in Yakima.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's really
interesting.
That's really the conclusion there. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. As a council member, I voted no against paid parking last year. I voted no. I mean, I understand the city staff's request to do it because our downtown needs a lot of TLC, like the curbs, the sidewalks, the parking lots are all kind of turning into, cheese graters.
But that would be solved if you had businesses coming in and not leaving.
100%.
Yeah.
And also, the proponents of this paid parking, most of them, right? I think they're the landlords down there who I don't think they're really struggling to make ends meet right now. So they just want to take more money. But why isn't the focus on filling up all of those storefronts? Because it's super depressing driving down, I think it's Yakima Ave, and seeing a lot of open business space. Instead, they're putting their focus on lobbying for downtown paid parking instead of filling up their empty business slots in downtown. I don't understand.
Are they lobbying for that so that it will fix the storefront? So therefore, putting a store in there is less cost on them, and the probability of renting out a space where everything is fixed in front of it, the sidewalk and so on forth, and is pleasant, is higher than the probability of renting out the way it looks right now. I'm devil's advocating this as a business owner.
Yep.
I mean, the sidewalks would be fixed in theory, right? I mean, it's in theory, because if people were still coming downtown, I mean, you're not going to have any money if no one's coming downtown.
Yeah.
And that was what I said when I voted no, was like, I think it's going to have the opposite effect. I think it's going to have the opposite effect of actually being able to even pay for all the improvements that are needed downtown. I think it's going to take 10, 15, 20 years to actually pay off that, because people have other options. They can go to Union Gap, they can go to West Valley, they can go to Sela, they can go X, Y, and Z. They don't have to go downtown. But the people downtown, where do they go?
Mm-hmm.
The people who live down there, right?
It makes no sense that you would put paid parking for a place where nobody wants to go.
Nobody wants to go. And in fact, they moved one of the biggest events that happens in downtown Yakima, Hot Shots, which is a big 3-on-3 tournament. It would close down some of Yakima. That has since moved on. So you take that out of the economic impact of those businesses too.
So I think you have to address first, why are those businesses leaving, and why can't you get them rented out? What is going on? What is preventing that from happening? And that is where you need to be looking for problem solving, not paid meters. Paid meters is a Band-Aid, and a really bad one at that. It's a Band-Aid full of alcohol.
Right.
True. That's a good one.
It just burns.
Yeah. This is supposed to be helping. Why isn't it helping?
Oh, man. So, I mean, that article is going to be coming out. I would definitely recommend reading it, passing it on. I'm not a part of it, so just want you to know, people out there, this is all Dave's doing. I'm pretty clear. I voted no on it, so I've been the no proponent on this the whole time.
I'm super curious what some of those building owners have to say about why they can't rent out their property. I hope you're going to at least do an interview with one or two of them.
We will reach out to them for sure.
Thank you,
Dave.
Guys, I think we should probably end this soon. We're at an hour and 4 minutes. We're going long. Let's we had two more things on our docket, but I'm gonna push those to our next podcast, which will just be in a week and a half, so folks can just hold on to their britches, and or a week, 2 weeks, whatever. I don't know what it is.
Whatever you say, Matt.
Yeah, but I do want to talk about our show sponsors because they help us keep this show going, which is Center for Self-Governance. They were just here in Yakima. We had great classes with some Gen Zers. It was great. There was 6 16-year-olds that all came to the class, so it was really cool. So Center for Self-Governance, that's our one sponsor. The other two are Baker's Auto Repair. Go see Jeff, get your car fixed. I was just down there the other day because somehow I pulled my door handle off of my car. I'm apparently too strong now.
After one of those city council meetings,
yeah. So I'm apparently too strong where I pulled the door handle. Like I snapped the door handle off, like, and I just looked at it like, how did this happen? I was not even angry. It just happened. So I had to get a new door handle, and Jeff is taking care of it. So it's been great. And then the last sponsor is Mac Daddy Coffee. You probably have seen me in their commercial. They just started running ads and different stuff, and I keep getting people like, "Hey, I just saw you on the Mac Daddy." I was like, "Man, it's like full circle." I do a commercial for Mac Daddy on my show, and now I'm in his commercial. It's kind of interesting. So, anyways, they just opened a new place, a new coffee shop, just about football throwing distance from my house.
That's gonna make you go broke.
It is. Although I will say, if Mark's listening, they screwed up my Arnold Palmer the other day, and I had to drive in and tell them, and then they screwed it up again, and then I gave it back, and then they got it right, and they apologized. But I just want to say, like, Mark was like the coolest dude with this. He called me later, and he was like, "I'm so sorry," blah 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 blah. So like, if you have and I was super kind. I was like, it tastes terrible, guys. I don't know what you guys did. Well, what had happened was they had put cold brew inside the black tea dispenser.
Oh,
because they kind of look the same.
Black coffee and lemonade.
Oh my gosh. Let me just tell you, black coffee and lemonade do not taste good. It does not at all. It is terrible tasting.
But I will tell you, I went there and I ordered a custom London fog. And I was like, can I get a custom lavender London fog? Didn't even blink an eye. Knew exactly how to make it, which is not common. So kudos on
that. The other thing, if you guys like to follow us, you can find us everywhere. Facebook, Instagram. We now have a TikTok. That's kind of fun.
You can stalk us in person.
We're just handing data over to China and America. That's just what we do. So we're on TikTok. And then if you like to support the show, if you go to patreon.com/accurate perspective, help support the show. It's $5, $5 a month keeps the doctor away. No, I'm just kidding. $5 a month. There was that old saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. No one heard that. All right.
We have to worry about the insurance
companies. Anyways, $5 a month helps support the show. It helps bring on guests, advertise, do all the fun stuff. We're trying to really make a presence here in Yakima. It's hard. There is talk. I've had some people reach out about possibly going on a radio, trying to be a radio show, trying to do some stuff that way, which would be kind of fun. I don't know how we get Hannah over here. We just like zoom her in or something. But
I guess
we figured that out.
Drive to Yakima. I have to drive to Yakima.
So, anyways, that's that, and we'll be back. We're trying to get some city council candidates on. We were trying to on this episode, didn't work out, but we're gonna keep trying. There's 3 currently announced for this year, and we're gonna get them all on. Not all at the same time, but we're gonna get them on.
Yeah.
We'll be here forever if we get all three of them on at the same time. But we're gonna get them on and have a discussion with them. So that'll be coming in a future episode. So,
and I have to say, I really, really like the screen sharing episode feature that we've got going on now, so we can share more with people.
Yep.
Yeah, and hopefully this is a bit more informational. We tried to slow it down a little bit, tried to show some things, based on some feedback. Trying to make it better for everybody. So we're not going 150 miles an hour. Sometimes that's just because I got like a energy in me and I got to go 150 miles an hour. But so anyways, we will be back soon. Thank you guys for listening to the show. We are now at 1 hour and 10 minutes long. So if you've listened all the way through, bless you. Have a great day. We'll see you guys soon. See ya.
Bye.